Hello, everybody. Welcome to our new session, Clarifying the Function of Language. So, we cannot find truth when our premise is ignorance of truth. Truth is revelation. We can't find salvation so long as our premise is sin or duality or a need for saving. The God idea or mind is omnipresence, meaning no crack or cranny or mind is not. The idea that there is nothing outside of consciousness or mind, no place to go, no idea to communicate that is not already communicated, forms images in human thought, which we see as methods of communication, transportation, and education. Not the language, but the idea. Omnipresence, one being, is the rational, operational thing. The idea, omnipresence, the idea of one, demonstrated as impersonal thinking, never changes. But better modes of communication, faster and safer transportation, and more effective educational methods appear as the idea is more consciously lived. The fact that mind, capital M, is the nature of the physical world makes omnipresence or oneness a demonstrable fact. The God idea is what the I misses or missees as inner and outer. So long as the theory of dualism continues to dull vision, the human steps leading to the end and the words signifying the presence of the idea are the idea, the end itself, functioning in and as individual conscious experience. Words and incidents of daily life name a point of view of reality, but the idea is the reality, the functional thing. With this understanding, we use words and human steps as the highest human corporeal concept of the divine idea. As vision clarifies, the words change, as do mediatory steps. Now, that was all taken from Margaret Laird's booklet, What is the Idea, on page 79 and 80. Welcome, Betty. We've set the frame. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, some of that we quoted Mrs. Eddy. Some of it I inserted in there. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here we are talking about clarifying the function of language. And what do you think needs to be clarified?
Well, I think we need to be very clear that the way things look is not the way they are. But the way they are is what has the language of appearances occur. So it's always at the level of our own perception that we live. Perception is reception. So while I can intellectually say that all is infinite mind and that that's a fact and it's true, I experience it only to the degree that I understand it. So my current experience as a human being is that it looks like the world I walk through. And that's fine. The thing, the freedom that I get with that understanding is that whether it's up or down, or good or bad, or right or wrong, in my personal point of view, it's always the presence of reality seen as right or wrong, or up or down, or good or bad. But the reality present is always at the standpoint of perfection. So my argument is never with the reality, it's with my own point of view. And when I understand that, I'm not so attached to my point of view. Because a lot of it I don't really like. And I think, well, what are you attached to that for? So that opens up the possibility that, oh, I don't need to be attached to that. I don't need to be a slave to that point of view. This science says all is infinite mind, so there's infinite possibility at my disposal.
Yeah, the question that came up for me is, so as a challenge, what does it take to free your mind to possibilities that you otherwise think you're walled off from?
And the fact is that's what this particular subject we're dealing with right now brings up, because what we're looking at all the time and what we deal with every day is the language of reality in which we, or the level of that language that we currently have, is where we're currently living. And so it's just language, and it shifts all the time, because what's actually present is reality. And that comes to view in a clearer form from moment to moment to moment.
Right. I think that I love the moment to moment to moment, because we think when we're looking at the world out there, we think it's stuck, or it just is that way. But there is no is there in a static kind of a reality. It's that it's moment by moment by moment, disappearing, reappearing in fairer form. So the thing, can I say that the thing that holds it stuck is my belief and my attachment to what it is I'm seeing?
Yeah, well, it's your perception of the reality. You know, when I understand that my point of view gives me what I'm looking at, then I'm willing to take a look at my point of view. Margaret used to say, look at your seeing, because your seeing is up to you.
Yeah.
And remember, what you see and what I see are very individual. We do not see the same thing, even though we will say, well, it's blue and it looks like a dresser, or it looks like a chair. The chair I see is not the chair you see. All of it is very individual, and you live it according to your way of living yourself, to your perception of reality, to your perception of what's present, to your perception of how it looks and what it's shaped like and what it means and what it doesn't mean and all that stuff. That's all very individual. We think we live it because the world says the chair is a chair. But look at the millions of chairs there are. And many times when you're out on a hike, a chair becomes a rock. You know, but you wouldn't put it in your living room and say, that's a chair, have a seat. We make it suit our own individual perception. All of it.
Yeah, I think what's hard for people to wrap their brains around is when you're looking at something that you don't like, when you have a problem or an issue or a major something showing up in your life, it doesn't look like that's just a point of view. It looks like that's the way things are. So what's a way to free up that yourself from that look? Because it seems to me that if we can free up ourselves from what we're faced with in the circumstances of living that we don't particularly care for, then we open the floodgates of a new what to show up. But it won't do so in the resistance, in the belief, in the, like that. So what's the access, I guess, or what's the possibility in there of really getting, it's just a point of view. How do I free myself up to say, well, that's one way to look at it, but kind of what are some other ways I could be looking at what I'm faced with?
Well, I don't think you take on the look like a thing to be manipulated. I think you take on your point of view as possibly one point of view among a million. And how else could I see it? and you settle for what is comfortable, what is freeing, what is rewarding in your experience of living. So it's always your point of view that gives you the experience of living in everyday activity. Whether I'm happy or sad or elated or depressed or all of those things is up to me. The circumstances don't make me anything. The circumstances are just the circumstances. They'll be there today and tomorrow and next year and the year after that. I'm the one that says they're good or bad or indifferent, or I like them or I don't like them, or I want them or I don't want them. All of that's up to me. A chair is going to be in the living room no matter what I think about it. I can like it, I can dislike it. What does that do for me? It makes me either happy or unhappy or displeased or pleased or willing or unwilling, all of those things. But I'm the one that decides all that for myself because of my perception of myself and of what I'm with, walking with, or looking at, or surrounded with.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, helpful. So those of you listening, if you're loving this, if you're liking this conversation, go ahead and smash the like or the heart button, the heart or whatever. If you have any questions, enter them into the comments. We love to have questions, make this interactive. Okay. So let's just dive in to what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay.
So on What is the Idea on page 80, Margaret Laird wrote, "Words and incidents of daily life name a point of view of reality." And that's much of what we've already just said. We wander around in the world of illusion when the language is mistaken for the idea.
Yep.
So where in the world are you wandering around in illusion, thinking that the language is real?
Well, we appear to be human beings on this level, and we grow up being taught that what we're looking at is real. We're taught that who we are, and we look at our fingers and our toes when we're babies. And as we grow up, we're taught that that thing we're looking at, called Betty, in my case, is who I am. And what we're not told at a very young age when we're learning all this is that Betty is a point of view that I have of myself. And that it's just one possibility. And who I am is the world I walk through. It's all my own being. All is infinite mind, says science. That being true, there's nothing beyond my own being. It's all mind, mindedness, self-expressing. And this is what it looks like for me. And on I go. I think there's something missing in there, Kim. Help me out.
Yeah, it seems like what came up for me, and when you were talking, is this comment that Margaret Laird made, saying, "Forgive me, Lord, for requiring my world to treat me this way."
Yep.
Absolute responsibility for what the look is showing up as.
Yep.
And the other piece of that is that the look that you've got, the language, is absolutely necessary for your growth and development. Say more about that.
Well, we're all in charge of ourselves, whether we know it or not. And so what we have up for the next step in our self-discovering is always our own doing. Whatever I need to come up is what's coming up. It isn't like it's something I plan. Like now I'm going to be purple. So I'll now hang purple curtains and dress in purple dresses and use purple colors everywhere. It isn't like that. But that's a good thing to look at from a picture point of view, because we do determine for ourselves what's next and what's next and what's next and how that should feel and how that should look and what it means. We make all that up as we go. So the purpose of the discussion today is for us to begin to look at what have I got around me and in front of me and uppermost in my consciousness all the time. It's what am I going to have for dinner? What kind of a job can I get? How much money am I going to make? What kind of a car do I drive? Can I go get a new one? Why not? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Can I play tennis today? Can I wear blue shoes with that dress? Can I go to the ball game tonight? Can I go out to dinner tomorrow? Can I visit with friends? Can I take a trip? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just a long list.
Right.
So we live ourselves in a language world of our own creating. And the point of science is to get us to recognize that the language is just our view of the world we're walking through. And it shifts all the time. And for each individual, it shifts as their understanding opens up. When 2 and 2 is 4 and I'm little and I'm in kindergarten or below, and I have to find out how come that's true, one apple and one apple is 2 apples. Well, if I make twice as much, how much is that? Well, I add 2 more apples and I'm 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 2 and 2 is 4, etc. Well, we're building our whole life that way. What I give myself as an experience is something that I have control over to a degree. And when I say control, I want myself to know that I'm having it be that way. It isn't that I can change apples into something else. It's that my experience of apples is up to me. Yeah, they're going to be apples and oranges and trees and flowers, but do I have them be delicious or sour? Do I have them be beautiful or drab? Do I have them meet a need or always not enough? It is up to each individual to live the world he's walking through as his own gift to himself.
Yeah. So the idea is the reality or the functional thing. So we want to be idea conscious.
Yep.
Okay. Now, Mary Baker Eddy in Science and Health on page 505, line 21, wrote it this way: understanding is line of demarcation between the real and the unreal. So we use understanding as a phrase a lot. Clarify for me understanding versus knowing, understanding versus intellect, understanding, distinguish for me understanding.
Well, a real simple way is to say you could tell a child that the stove is hot and he should not touch it. It will hurt. And he says, uh-huh, uh-huh. And he touches the stove. And then he says, ouch! Oh! And you say, that's what I mean. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. do not touch the stove when it's hot.
And the child now has a major understanding to not do that.
And instead of the intelligence, instead of the words he heard me say, what he did gave him the experience of what I was saying, and that is what produced understanding. Now he knows, and he can tell his friend, don't touch the stove, it's hot.
Right.
It'll hurt.
So understanding.
This experience is what produces understanding.
Okay, so understanding is experience-based. So you can't have understanding just from knowledge or book reading.
No, it's
experiential.
That's
Got
right.
it. Okay. Spiritual understanding unfolds mind, life, truth, and love, and demonstrates the divine sense, giving the spiritual proof of the universe in science.
Yep.
And that's Mary Baker Eddy, 505, line 22 in Science and Health. So spiritual understanding is experiential. It's your experience of it that's giving that to you.
Experience.
Say that again, sorry.
I said yes and no. It's a different level of experience. Experience of touching the stove is a physical thing, humanly speaking.
Yep.
But when you're talking about understanding, you're talking about a mental experience. And the mental experience is felt, seen, heard, and felt, actually, humanly. But the difference is that my practical access to understanding is built on my ability to live what I'm talking about. In fact, to actually do what I'm talking about. For me to say that 2 and 2 is 4 is a mental experience is only evident when I actually do the example of 2 and 2 is 4. So I start out as a human being having to show myself actually what it is I'm trying to perceive, what I'm looking at, what's going on. And that is what produces what I call understanding. All the way through your life, you're changing levels of understanding. Your understanding from reading a book is different from touching a stove and finding out it's hot. It is a mental perception. And as we go along, we learn that the words we use to describe it, while they do give us the idea to explore, really don't come home to roost unless there's something that we actually experience that has us say, aha, yeah, I got it. Oh boy. Then we know. Otherwise, it's intellectual and maybe so, maybe not. We can't count on it. But what we experience, we can count on.
Yeah.
So in the human everyday living, language is like a tool. It's like in this particular level of living, we have a lot of tools. Every place we look is a tool for understanding. It's a language that gives us something to facilitate what we're talking about.
Good. Clear. And if you have any questions, type them into your comments. Let us know what you've got. All right. So in Mind is the Athlete on page 74, you say it this way. Language is used as a term describing both written and spoken language, as well as all sensory perception.
Yeah. And the note is important too.
This includes the seen, heard, and felt phenomenon. That would be all sensory perception, the seen, heard, and felt. So everything that you're looking at, everything in life, every circumstance, it includes all of it.
Yeah, all the physical universe.
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. And what is the idea on page 80? Margaret Laird wrote, as vision clarifies, the words change, as do the mediatory steps until they disappear. So, does this mean as we live ourselves and we get clear about facts of being, the words change, the look changes. It's right now, right now, right now, right now. Could be a whole new now, not even representative of the past. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, that is exactly what it's talking about, however. As vision clarifies, the words change, as do the mediatory steps. For instance, I'm just saying that it's talking about growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to have 4 apples to figure out that 2 and 2 is 4 anymore. So my language changes. I say it differently and live it differently and understand it differently. So that's what that's talking about.
That would be my same experience of learning a new, you think that there's all this that you don't know. And then as you dive into that, you learn a whole big world of what you don't know as you learn inside of that. But there's a whole bunch that you now know, and you look at things differently in any venue that you're learning. We have our boat. As I've learned all about diesel engines and the other physical systems on that boat, I now have a whole different idea than before I bought the boat and knew nothing. So I look at those systems completely differently.
And everybody around you has a different experience too.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. All right. So as long as word and interpretations are regarded as if they were the occurrence, they can't change. Say more about that. As long as I regard that as the occurrence, they can't change. Does that mean that I'm saying that's real? Is that what instead of the idea? Is that what has them can't change?
If you think the thing you're manipulating out there is real, nothing's going to change. I'm always late. It's just the way I am. You might as well get used to it. I'm always late. Well, you just don't know about my house. The living room is the way it is, and it's a mess. And there's nothing I can do about it. That's the way the house is. So there it is.
Right. I call that arguing for our limitations.
That's right. And we do. Without purpose. I mean, we don't even recognize it. We argue for the limitations we have around us because we actually believe that they're real and that there's nothing we can do about it.
Right. I like to be well prepared, well ahead of time, no last minute stuff.
That's right. And I live in that.
Oh, this is fun. All right. So on we go. In Science and Health on page 199, line 21, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, the devotion of thought to an honest achievement makes the achievement possible.
Yep. And the note goes with it.
Exceptions only confirm this rule, proving that failure is only occasioned by too feeble a faith.
That's right. So devotion of thought is what makes things possible.
Right.
if you fail at that, it's because you didn't have enough faith to keep going.
Got it.
But if your devotion is there, you'll get there.
Very good. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And in Mind is the Athlete on page 74, you wrote, all language occurs as a view or perception of reality, which whatever being is being.
Yeah.
And it's the only view you can have
Yep.
at right now. And it doesn't mean it's the only view you can ever have. It's the only view you can have right now.
It's true.
And right now. And right now. So, okay, got it.
Maybe
My
we
body.
should,
Go ahead.
maybe we should stop. We've used up our time.
I know. Well, we'll stop here. My body is the language currently identifying my individual conscious thought.
That's right.
So say a little bit about that.
Well, Margaret used to say, forgive me, Lord, for requiring my world to treat me this way.
Yep.
So the reality is that whatever is going on with you is your own requirement out of who you're believing yourself to be and believing the circumstances to be and believing whatever is around you to be.
Yes.
It's all within the individual. And, it's like growing a new arm or a new leg. Nobody can do it for you. You have to do it for yourself.
Yep.
You're
Very
the one
good.
that frees yourself. You're the one that makes it possible for yourself to grow and blossom or to not grow and blossom.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one in charge. You're the authority in your life.
Right. So we got a question from Lydia who says, so a person saying they are in debt doesn't mean the debt is real. They just are perceiving it as debt and a problem.
Well, yes, that is what we're saying. But we're saying that your belief that you are a person in debt isn't real. It's your belief that it has to be that way. And what did you do to pile that up and make that such a big reality in your experience? Because it all came from you from start to finish. And it will be there until you stop doing whatever it is that has you create that reality for yourself. So it isn't like you've got a world out there that you can blame. They didn't do it to you. You did that. You made that. And you can take care of it anytime you decide to shift who you're being and who you're believing you are. When I give up the belief that I need this and I need that and I don't have this and I don't have that, and it's somebody else's fault, so I'll get from and try to figure that out. It is, the lesson here is really one of self-responsibility. It's one of being willing to be entirely responsible for yourself at every level. One thing going on, Betty being Betty the best way she knows how, and being responsible for how that looks every step of the way.
Right. I remember when I was a kid and I dug myself a hole at school in terms of how I was behaving. And I was like, it's not fair. Wah. And then I had this conversation with my mom and dad. Now you can imagine this because my mom's right there. So I had this conversation and they said, well, who are you being at school that would create that reality for you? And I thought, oh, wow. And I had to take a look at who I was being. And then I had to start being responsible for my being and my behavior at school. And as soon as I did that, the whole thing shifted. There was no longer the problem that was there. It completely shifted. So same thing here with that question.
Well, you know,
And I
it's
hope
like
that's clear.
it's like raising children when you were little, and I remember many times, what does it take to have a good friend? It takes being a good friend. Now, how do you think a good friend behaves? And I remember having conversations like that with you and your sister when you were growing up, and you would name all the qualities you wanted to see in a good friend. They
Mhm.
would really be there to help you when you needed it and to be fun, have fun times with when that was coming up, and to go to parties with and play with and so on. And it was I think it was the way that you learned how to have good friends, was to really be a good friend.
Mhm.
And the qualities that you wanted to see there, you started being that quality, because what you put out is what comes back to you.
Mhm.
So humanly speaking, it's a good rule.
Yep.
You put out what you want to see in the world, and that's what comes back to you, because that's what you're generating as the world you're walking through.
Yeah. So clarifying the function of language was the whole goal today. And so I think what we've done is look at language, how it shows up, everything in the seen, heard, felt phenomena, and how it's the idea that's showing up, perfection functioning, the only way you can see it. So this week, between now and next week, which will be on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central and 5 p.m. Pacific, check it out. Play with it. Look at your world and say, what can I own here? What is this? What's my perception and point of view? What's a different possibility? I challenge you to tackle that, take it on, and just observe. Just watch. It's neither good nor bad, but it'll open up some things. All right. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for the question. And we shall see you Tuesday next week, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. If this has been valuable and you're if you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you're not subscribed, hit the notification button, the little bell, all of it, and we shall see you next week.